Are we ready? Okay. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnanam Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nam Shrishtam Manumapi Satchiputram Matrasharupam Rupam Tasya Grajamarupurim Maturinga Savatim Radha Kundam Girivaram Maho Radhikamadhavasam Prapto Yasya Pratitya Kripaya Shri Gurum Tam Natasmi Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyaiva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha Anarpitacharim tirat garunayavatirna kaluh Shamarpaitamунnatojvalarasam savakti shriyam Hari puratas sundara dhyuti kadamba sundipita Sada hridaye kandare spurato vasachinandana Ajanulambita bujjo kanakapadato sankirtanaikapitaro kamalaya taksham Vishwambaro dhiyavaro jugadharmapalo Vande jagatpriyakaro karunavataru Ladini shakti swarupaya gauranga suridaya cha Bhakta shakti pradhanaya katadara namaste He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Radhi Vrindavanadi Shri Karunamrita Vahine Kripaya Nijapadabja Dasyan Mayam Pradiyatam Bhaktya Vihinaya Aparadha Lakshaya Chiptasya Kamaditarangamadye Kripa Maitvam Sharanam Prapanam Brinde Namaste Charanarabindam Brinde Namaste Charanarabindam Srila Gurudev Ki Jai Sriman Mahaprabhu Ki Jai Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai Shri Dauji Gopal Ki Jai Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premananda Hari Well, good afternoon to all of you. To all. Well, I don't know if you may have any questions, something you may like that we speak about. The idea was just invite whatever topic you may have and we may share at least for today. So, I don't know, are there any questions? You sure?
Yeah, I brought this up yesterday with Swami. It's connected to the classes he gave during Kartik, where he talked about the ability to find purpose. And so I was wondering if that could be considered a definition of Shraddha, the ability to find purpose in something. And if not, what may be lacking in that definition that is contained within Shraddha?
You can summarize the question.
Yeah. So the question has to do with we were speaking during a series of lectures in last Kartik called Divine Imperfect, and we at least in one lecture or two we spoke about purpose. So the question here is in connection to Shraddha and how much one term is synonymous with the other, basically, and if that's not happening, which will be the lacking between the two in relation, one in relation to the other. So it's an interesting connection that you made, because at least I will say immediately that there is plenty of connection, even to the point of calling them synonymous. The idea of purpose, the idea of faith. Of course, there are different levels of faith. There are different levels of purpose. But I think one could equate one with the other. For example, in Sanskrit, The word purpose could be defined as artha. Artha means many things, of course. Artha means also gain, but also means purport. You see some of the main commentaries on purpose. Sorry, not purport. But some of the main commentaries on books like the Bhagavad, you have the Sarartha Darshini, the Bhavartha Deepika. So artha has to do with meaning, the meaning of something. And also it's connected with the idea of gain. And interestingly, in that context, prem, or the ultimate goal for us, is defined in the scriptures as panchama purushartha. Sometimes you have the idea of purusharthas, or the goals to attain in human life. Dharma, artha, kama, moksha. But there is the pancham, the fifth one, which is prem, which is actually an extreme, if you will, development of shraddha. We may speak in those terms. We may speak in terms of shraddha, initial shraddha, but we have also intermediate shraddha in the sense of nishtha. Nishtha is firm faith, shraddha is faith. So you have first soft faith, firm faith, and naturally like superlative faith. And we may translate that as prem, which is called, again, paramartha also, like supreme prem prayojan. Sometimes the idea of prayojan also, prayojan has to do with the ultimate goal, but also has to do with the ultimate sense of purpose. So, and prayojan, prem prayojan is again shraddha in its ultimate expression. So I will say that according to one's faith, one finds meaning in certain things, in certain directions. For sure, Krishna speaks in the Bhagavad Gita about that, about the different levels of faith, and how a particular type of faith takes a person to find meaning in something, because if not, they wouldn't be doing whatever they're doing in rajas, tamas, and he describes pretty unbecoming stuff for someone in sattva, for example. Like the one in tamas will find purpose in criticizing others and exploiting and whatever. Will rejoice herself in hating, and you say, I mean, there's no purpose in that. But for that person, that's full of purpose, and their faith is invested there. So one could connect. Whatever, one has some faith in something that gives a particular purpose. Or sometimes when people, I don't know, of course, and many times we have spoken about this, that the real meaning in life, because sometimes people say, well, the goal of life is to be happy. But strictly speaking, I mean, that's not the goal of life. The goal of life is to find purpose, whether you are happy or not. You follow? I mean, if you may have a difficult time, but you find purpose in that, you may not be, it may not be the happiest moment of your life, but you are extracting, drawing some purpose, so that nourishes your, I mean, you can, the famous example I think we quoted in that, some of those lectures were the one of Viktor Frankl, the author of, how do you say in English? Man's Search for Meaning. And he went through the Auschwitz and all these concentration camps, and he was seeing that mostly every person there was just like leaving themselves to death, surrendering themselves to dying. Because, and he said, actually they were dying not because of course some people were killed literally, but the ones who chose to die for real were the ones who were not able to find purpose in whatever was happening. So purpose was lacking, everything else was lacking. And again, that goes hand by hand with the idea of faith, because faith gives some hope, gives some meaning, and you take that out and no reason for continuing with one's life. He explains in that book that if he was able to survive the Holocaust, if you will, and the particular version of it that he had to go through, it was because he found deep purpose in that. I mean, he was not justifying that or saying that was okay, but he had to find purpose in order to stay alive, basically. And he developed a whole psychological system on the basis of purpose. He calls logotherapy, and that's quite tied with the idea of faith and Shraddha, especially as the Gita presents it according to the different gunas, basically. So, for example, of course, we may speak that in terms of sattva. Even we may not necessarily go to the transcendental realm there, but sattva is a very interesting concept in this connection also, because I mean sattva we sometimes translate as goodness, but it's not really very accurate terms in terms of the etymology of the word. Now you have sat and twa. Sat, twa. So the twa in Sanskrit also has to do with what you in English will say ness, like playfulness or crookedness. No? So in Sanskrit that is twa. So you have sattva or whatever twa. Now there are many terms like this. And sat means real, basically. Something which is real or being. No? So sattva will be like beingness, or that state in which things are, if you will, in their natural purpose, if you will. I mean, everything has some, if you will, inherent purpose. That's a very important point for us. It's not so much about creating our own idea of meaning and projecting that so we can be happy and you create your own sense of purpose, but everything has some inherent purpose, and we should be able to draw that, to extract that. That has to do with sattva. A sattvic person is sattvic. Now, one of the main reasons is because that person is balanced enough to find meaning everywhere, in every situation. And that has to do with the sattvic type of faith. I mean, it sounds pretty elevated, high, but still sattvic. We are not speaking even about the nirguna plane. And again, the person in sattva is constantly drawing purpose, and that's why that person is described as balanced and constantly satisfied. Bhagavad Gita says in sattva, he mainly says two things. Two symptoms of someone in sattva is that person is happy and is in a constant experience of receiving happiness and knowledge. No? So I thought about that. I thought it was, one could say, what's that type of knowledge that the person in sattva receives? Is the knowledge that comes from contacting the purpose that is inherent in everything, not projecting one's own rajasic, tamasic, if you will, agenda onto people and things and situations. And that has to do with the type of faith, again, because one thing is inseparable from the other. I mean, that's why we say, even an atheistic person that may say, I do not believe in anything, well, that's a type of faith also. No? They believe in non-belief, if you will. No? And that gives purpose to them. I mean, for them, that's their life will go around that idea. No? So yeah, I think that's a good definition. No? Purpose on one side and Shraddha on the other, or faith. No? Because Shraddha sometimes is exclusively tied to transcendental faith, but it can also refer to rajasic, tamasic, sattvic faith. Krishna uses that term in the Gita for referring to any types of faith. So I think that's a good way of approaching the faith issue in contemporary language also, because sometimes you speak with people about faith and they, okay, thank you very much, next topic. No. But if you invoke terms such as purpose or meaning, they are much more user-friendly for the present-day community, if you will. No? And still you are speaking about that, no? About faith, even though some may like or not. Of course, again, one doesn't like certain terms because of the implications tied to them historically, in the name of faith, so many things. But if you say in the name of purpose, that sounds maybe more noble for some. Even though in the name of purpose, people have done the same exact crazy stuff along history. Because again, one thing is the same than the other. Hitler had a particular faith in his ideal, if you will. Not necessarily religious, not necessarily, and that was tied to his sense of purpose. No, I mean, I go into one extreme, of course. We can go to any case, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, and Nirguna even. So for us, our faith ideally should be our Shraddha should be not only Nirguna but Shastriya Shraddha. I think that's a good point also. As Guru Maharaj mentions, Shastriya Shraddha is a faith that is informed by revelation. So, and when we get in touch with that, we feel, oh, here I'm receiving a new sense of purpose, a new purpose to my life. How many times we have connected that? We read, I don't know, any Gaudiya Vaishnava book for the first time in our life, or we met a sadhu the first time in our life, or the second, or whatever, and we felt some new sense of purpose coming to us, new perspective, new horizon, new prospect. And naturally our faith was built on that, no? Naturally went in that direction. So we can also speak from our safe experience in that sense. And as our faith grows in bhakti, I will say our sense of purpose, of course, will grow more and more. I mean, we will be able to find extreme, if you will, purpose in the smallest details, if you will, no? And that's why you find our great Mahajans, Mahatmas, they may be concentrated in one aspect of the practice, but finding so much in that direction that when they want to recall is, oh my God, the day was gone and I was just absorbed into, I don't know, decorating the deity or fighting with Mother Mohan. You want salt, I don't have salt, whatever. Imagine, no? You're 15 hours a day. So what were the day? I was fighting with Mother Mohan, salt, non-salt, and so much purpose was in that, nothing else was remaining at that point. Of course, we cannot imitate that, but yeah, as your faith grows, of course, your engagement, and that's why the scripture says that as you advance in bhakti, you will find so much purpose in your devotional engagement that you won't be willing to waste any single moment outside of that, because there's so much purpose in that particular context. No? For example, one of the symptoms of Bhava Bhakti, there are 9 that Rupa Goswami describes, and the second one, he says, Abhyartha Kalatvam. So Abhyartha Kalatvam means you, at that stage, and remember, this is Bhava, which we could say is a level of development of Shraddha, a level of upgrading of your Shraddha. And Abhyartha Kalatvam means you don't want to miss the least single moment outside of the context of bhakti, because so much purpose is there. So the least distraction from that, you will feel, oh, that's the greatest loss. Again, this is not a neurotic case or some dysfunctional personality and, oh, I lost 5 seconds in bhakti and I got depressed. It's not like this, no? And we cannot imitate that. But we can have a glimpse of what must it be to be at those levels of Shraddha with the corresponding level of discovered purpose there, that is so much purpose that, I mean, you start to conceive not a single millisecond should be wasted here, and you are carrying that in a healthy way, of course. So that's the point. And of course, when we speak about Prem, which is the churning of Bhav, the ultimate churning of Bhav, there is no point of losing purpose. I mean, at that point, purpose keeps increasing even, no? That's the nature of the Goloka and of the spiritual plane even, no? It's not that there is, okay, I reached Prem, I finished, that's all, here's the full picture, all purpose, so now what? On the basis of that, ongoing, expanding purpose, no? I mean, the Swarup Shakti is creating those things, as Guru Maharaj will say, no? When we speak about a spiritual body, sometimes we may think, so my spiritual body, we know bhakti is non-inherent, but what may at least think, but at least maybe my spiritual identity is already there in the spiritual world, like in a suit, in a closet waiting, in a latent state. Maybe Bhakti is not latent here, but it's latent in a closet in Golok Vrindavan with my name on. This is your body. But Guru Maharaj said, no. I mean, some people may think like this. We are not also against that, but the point, he prefers to think in the terms of a new wave of Swarup Shakti is arising from the hearts of the Nitya Siddhas, and it creates newer manifestations, newer forms, newer leelas, and that has to do with new sense of purpose again. Like he gives example when Gopakumar arrives to Golok Vrindavan, there is a whole new leela. I mean, that was not happening before. He arrived, and as Sanatana Goswami describes it, some of them didn't know what happened. Krishna embraced him. Krishna passed away. Passed away, you say? Like fainted? Passed out, sorry. Passed away is other thing. He fainted. He passed out. And the Brajavasis were wondering, who is this person that made Krishna faint? So that was a new situation. So a new level of purpose to be attained, and there's no end to that. That's a good point also. I mean, we may think their faith reaches a point no longer is developing, but we know that the nature of the higher plane is constant expansion, constant development. So some ideas, but I would say in brief that I agree with your proposal that faith and purpose, Shraddha and purpose should go, Shraddha and Artha can go hand by hand. I mean, you take one and you can have the other. It's like, and it's a good way to speak about faith nowadays, modern society, purpose, meaning. Everyone will agree with, yeah, purpose, meaning. Kishore has some follow-up questions.
Well, it's not quite formed, but I was just thinking how often devotees may describe like that intermediate stage where purpose is not, it's more like it's tested more.
Is what?
It's tested more. Where purpose is tested more. Where like
Tested.
Like in Kanishka, one like projects purpose onto everything. In Uttama, the purpose is naturally revealing itself and everything. And then the Madhyam stage, one has to work harder to kind of, because there's honesty, you can't project purpose into everything the same way. So there's like it's an interesting stage, the Madhyam stage.
Yeah. It should be interesting enough that we may feel tempted to go into it, no? and remain there all the necessary time. But yeah, as you say, maybe Kanishta, to speak in very broad way, Kanishta, Madhyam, Uttam, but yeah, in the very beginning stage we still may yet project bhakti in our lives, of course. And that's the point also, no? I mean, when we do not have Shraddha from day one. From day one we have, as Rupa Goswami say, Adho Shraddha. So Adho, the word Adho, when he mentions the 9 stages of bhakti, from Shraddha to Prem, in his verse he says Adho Shraddha. Adho means in the beginning, there is Shraddha, and so on. But in the commentary to those verses, Jiva Goswami and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, Adho refers to Sadhu Sangha prior to Shraddha. Because you cannot have Shraddha without once the first Sadhu Sangha, then will come another Sadhu Sangha after Shraddha. You will more consciously culture Sadhu Sangha. But first you have Sadhu Sangha where you don't have an idea what Sadhu Sangha about. And you're receiving the first Bhakti Samskars. And eventually that turns to be Shraddha. But it's not that you had that Shraddha before, that type of Shraddha. You may have some other strata and some other corresponding purpose. So, but bhakti, interestingly, comes to our life without us having strata. You follow the idea, no? I mean, it gives the strata, it gives the purpose. Again, we were just wandering in life with some other purpose in mind, Brahmanda, Brahmite, Kona, Bhagavan, Jiva, and we were intercepted by bhakti, and yeah, another purpose comes and corresponding faith along with it. So yes, and even though in that case we may not be yet very pretty aware of what's going on, we are being blessed by bhakti, but as you say, some projection is still there, where we are not very much informed about revelation. So the point is, our strata is not yet very shastriya, because shastriya strata mainly characterizes the madhyam stage. So in kanishta means weak faith. Weak faith means not very much informed by shastra, ideally. No? I have faith, but not so much grounded in revelation. So if my faith is not in revelation, it's in something else, mainly. Of course, I may say I have some faith in revelation, in Guru, Sadhu, but not so grounded. So that's what is called kanishta. Kanishta means not firm faith, like weak. Because shraddha, the revelations, is not so present in that shraddha. So proportionate to that, we may project, as you say, some sense of purpose, because we are not yet being able to draw purpose from revelation, because we are not too much aware of revelation whatsoever. On the other extreme, as you say, you have the uttam, who is just have been thrown into an ocean of purpose, if you will. No, there is no need to think about that. No need to even think everything has inherent purpose. That is just revealing, no, in front of the person. So yeah, the madhyam will be in between, and with this, as Guru Maharaj will say, harmonizing between head and heart, and getting acquainted with revelation, and trying to draw purpose from that, draw meaning from that, and sustain one's strata on the basis of what revelation is telling us that reality is about, and developing faith in that, because you have to trust revelation. Sometimes that's challenging, because it's easier to trust what you think you are seeing or feel, the reality that you think it's real, that just go into revelation and maybe you find some things that go beyond, because it's transrational. So it's easier to go to the rational at one point, to the empirical platform. You know, when people say the real world, they're basically speaking the world of your senses. You know? But how real is that? How accommodating is that? Is that world? Today I was hearing one lecture from Guru Maharaj. It was nice. It was the oldest one that was in Sabda Brahman. I was looking for the oldest ones, the one 1993. So he was speaking about that, how the world of our senses is so small that we need to expand that through our mind, through our world of our imagination. And generally we resort to that. And the intellect is even bigger. But above all that, of course, is the Atman, what to speak of Paramatma and so on. So there are levels of purpose to all that. So as a Madhyam, yeah, Madhyam has to, is trying to do that exercise, to go beyond the direct experience, the pratyaksha of senses, mind, intellect, and try to open him herself to what happens when I open myself to revelation and I let my faith be nourished by that. And it still is a little bit, again, calculated, as some technical effort is there. It's not so spontaneous as with Anuttam, but gradually it becomes more and more fluid, no, if you will. So, yeah. I mean, if you apply yourself to practice in the context of revelation under good guidance, that will take you to certain experiences, undeniable ones. So that will for sure nourish your faith in that direction, no? In Shastriya Shraddha. As Srila Maharaj will say, what faith do we have in faith? No? No? And there are different levels, types of faith. So we are speaking about Shastriya Shraddha. We can ask, which Shraddha do I have in Shastriya Shraddha? So we open to that. We receive that first impact from the sadhu. We have some experiences by guiding our faith to Shastra, and that increases our Shraddha in Shastriya Shraddha, if you will. And so on. But yeah, Madhyam is a unique stage. So, and a very challenging one for sure. No? It's a very, as we spoke the other day, it speaks a lot about integration of complexity. No? And like inhabiting, let's say, the realm of paradox and dealing with the unknown and throwing ourselves into certain doubts that will should nourish our faith. As Guru Maharaj will say, that's the role of the Guru, basically, to make you doubt and to, in a healthy way, to take you out of the comfort zone. All that has to do with being a madhyam, a progressive thinker, basically, in our practice. And for most of us, we need to go through that, for sure, in order to reach the ultimate converging point of Braja Leela. There, as we were speaking also regarding this concept of naivete, no? Comparing naivete, you say? Comparing Kanishta to a first naivete and Uttam to a ultimate naivete in the Leela. Everyone is innocent and ignorant, quote unquote. But you don't have you have to go through the intermediate stage of Madhyam and solve so much complexity in order to be naive in the proper sense of the term. So there is no non-stop flight from first naivete to the second one. You have to land on the land of complexity, integrate whatever needs to be integrated, and next flight will be announced at that moment. Flight is leaving, please, 108, airline 8, something like that. Okay, something else? I don't know.
A question that's kind of related to faith. Recently, one lady in Vrindavan, devotee lady, committed suicide probably, and her neighbor said that she said she wanted to meet Krishna. So I saw discussion on Facebook, and there is one devotee who's really like, everyone who leaves their body in Vrindavan, they go to spiritual world, so for sure she's there, and who are we to judge that she's not? So I'm wondering to what extent there is a sense to discuss with such a person, because
to which extent there is
sense to discuss with such a person who's like pounding on that, like it has to be literal and not, like, or maybe they should be left alone, but...
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think we should analyze every situation in a very specific way, because, again, when we say living in Vrindavan, dying in Vrindavan, being in Vrindavan, what's the meaning of that? I mean, and what's the meaning of being outside of Vrindavan? So many quotes in this regard. No, I don't know. Famous examples are when Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta, he accepted Diksha from Golkishore Das Babaji. Almost the first instruction he received was never go to Calcutta. And almost one of the first things he did was to go there. So someone asked him, like, what are you doing here? I mean, your Gurudev said that to you, the first instruction, if you will. So you say, but I never went to Calcutta, actually. I always remain at the feet of my Guru Maharaj. All I wanted to show, Calcutta is a state of consciousness, as is Vrindavan. Or when as Guru Maharaj said, when Prabhupada was leaving Vrindavan, quote unquote, leaving, and some people who was quote unquote living in Vrindavan, they were asking him, why are you leaving Vrindavan? So Guru Maharaj will say, those people who say that, they were not living in Vrindavan, because they thought that Vrindavan is a geographical area actually. And actually they didn't understand he was taking Vrindavan with him to the rest of the world and expanding, opening embassies, Brajavasi embassies everywhere. So actually that's one of the Dham apparatus, to consider Vrindavan or the Dham a geographical area. That means to delimit, you say, delimit the place such and such miles, and so this goes hand by hand with this idea. If you say, I left the body in Vrindavan, write this line in this location, geographical, I was in Vrindavan. We are not speaking of it. That's a type of apparatus actually. So what if someone else, if Prabhupada would have left his body in New York? Oh, what a pity he was not able to live in Vrindavan. Nonsense. No? Nonsense. So, of course, with this, I'm not saying that if you left your body in Vrindavan, it had no effect whatsoever. I'm not saying that. There is some benefit, but also there is a benefit according to the level of your bhava there. Not so much where you are, what you are. Of course, again, the scriptures, there are quotes in the scripture that will say what happens if you die in Vrindavan, what happens if you... But also we should understand them properly, and also sometimes the scripture may say if you spend, I don't know, 1 millisecond in Vrindavan, everything came to you, but also you have not, what does it mean? Because scripture also say, Labha matra sadhu sangha sarva siddhi hoy. By 1 millisecond in sadhu sangha, all perfection is there. And you may say, all perfection is there? Where? I have so many hours, days, weeks, months of sadhu sangha, and full perfection has not yet come. Of course, we may say it's on its way. From day one, you receive that seed of all perfection. Or we may say, I have not yet had full sadhu sangha. Not because the full sadhu sangha was not there, but I was not able to fully embrace that things fully, and that's why it's not happening yet. The same with the chanting of Srinam, and the same we could extend with the residence in the Dham. I mean, for example, if you take a plane to Vrindavan and you arrive there physically and you become there are crazy stuff going on in Vrindavan. There is, how do you say in English, where ladies are being kidnapped and used for prostitution, and, sorry? Sex traffic is there. I mean, there's this whole like undercurrent of stuff there. No? So what will you say? The guy who is employing those ladies, someone killed him because of who he was. He went to Golok Vrindavan, he died in Vrindavan. I mean, I don't think he was thinking about Radha Krishna, he was thinking about some other couples, not the Divine One. So what Vrindavan is that? So again, Vrindavan is a state of consciousness. That our principle is that. Rupa Goswami, yes, he mentions that's an important point in Raga Bhakti, is try to live in Vrindavan. But Jiva Goswami says, if you cannot be there physically, try to be there at least mentally. But the implication there is, okay, if I can be physically, I don't have to be there mentally. No, that's not the implication. The implication is, if you cannot be there physically and mentally, at least be mentally wherever you are. In other words, to be in Vrindavan is to be there mentally, whether you are in Vrindavan physically or not. No? And one sadhu once told me, if you are physically in Vrindavan but mentally somewhere else, better to be physically somewhere else and mentally in Vrindavan. Like implying this idea, if you are only physically there, that's not full Vrindavan, full Brajavas. No? So I wouldn't be so... but I know, I mean, who knows the background of this situation? Generally, when someone dies, also some emotions are there, and I've heard many times devotees, I don't know, saying any devotee dies and the discourse is he's in Golok Vrindavan with Krishna. And you say, but why every devotee is going there, it seems, because they are saying, and it's not necessarily the case. And it's not a problem. I mean, they are on the way to Krishna, but not necessarily in this lifetime. And right now in Golok, that's for sure it's not happening, because first they have to be born in Bhoma Vrindavan. At least that birth you have to give them. But for some it's no, right in Golok Vrindavan. So it's not Shastric. I mean, and of course Krishna may do whatever he likes in one sense, but that will be an exception to the rule. So yeah, Vrindavan is a state of consciousness. Krishna says in the Gita, Jam jam bhapi smaram barambam kyayanti ante kalevaram tam tame vaiti kauntaya sadatat bhava bhavitaha. So the word bhava appears there twice. And Krishna there says, sometimes it is say, according to the bhava you have when you leave this body, that bhava you will attain in your next birth. So bhava means not necessarily bhava bhakti. Bhava means mood. Bhava means state of consciousness. And bhava means existence. So according to the mood in which you left your body, there will be a corresponding existence waiting for you in the next life. Sometimes people say, according to what you are thinking about. But that's not like this. According to how you are thinking about whatever. Because you can be thinking about Krishna like Kamsa. But his destiny was corresponding to how he was thinking about Krishna, not to what he was thinking about. So that's the point. I mean, we can, Anuttama Bhakta, maybe it's Anuttama Bhakta, but just, I don't know, he's seeing his mother coming, but he will see her with an eyes of Uttama Bhakta, so he won't be projecting upadhis and my mother and his, but maybe he was seeing her and left the body. So oh, he was thinking about the mother, for sure he will come back to this world. That's not like that. And I'm a Kanishta Bhakta when I'm about to die and someone puts a picture of Krishna right in my face like this till I left this body, for sure he went to Golok Vrindavan. Not necessarily. No? Depends the bhava, which was the mode in which you were thinking. So the again applies to Vrindavan. You can be in Vrindavan and the example you give is about suicide. Of course, I don't know the details of background of that suicide, but that's not generally the case to commit suicide, and there are some things said in Shastra about someone who commits suicide. But I won't enter into that because I don't know which type of suicide it was, but let's say it was a pretty dysfunctional issue and you killed yourself in Braj. Yes, at least you were in Braj and some benefit probably was there, but I wouldn't be. Because the person may say, who are you to judge? He went to Golok Vrindavan. Well, that person is judging by saying that. I mean, that person is pronouncing a conclusive utterance. Who are you to say that? I mean, I won't say where that person is, but it's not just every single case that, no. Of course, if you are living a good devotional life in Braj physically, because mentally you are somehow there, that will be totally blessing, even if you are not going to Vrindavan in that lifetime. No, I mean. So I think also sometimes in scripture there are these statements that I'm not saying they are exaggeration, but they are showing like the potential of these items of bhakti, because residing in the Dham is a pretty powerful one. Rupa Goswami mentions 64 items, and the last 5, he kind of summarizes the first 59 in the last 5. He calls them Panchanga Bhakti, which is Sadhu Sangha, Nama Kirtan, Bhagavat Shravan, Mathura Bas, Sri Murtir Shradaya Sevan. So Sadhu Sangha, Nama Kirtan, hearing the Bhagavat, residing in Mathura, which is another way of saying Vrindavan, and serving the deity with faith. So those are powerful angas of bhakti. But again, they have to be performed in a certain way, because you can, again, take Nam Kirtan, and that's one thing. Nama Parad is another thing. You take Sadhu Sangha, that's one thing, but Vaishnava Parad is another thing. You take Mathura Bas, residence in Vrindavan, that's one thing, but Dhamma Parad is another thing. So you can put on one side of the scale everything that is being said in the scriptures about the glories of residing in the Dham and dying in the Dham, but you can put on the other side of the scale what happens if you engage in Dham Aparat. So Everything should be properly understood. Because you can say Hare Krishna, but that may be Namaparad. You may be embracing a sadhu, but you are just doing that to cheat him, who knows why. So that's Vaishnava Parad. It's not sadhu. So you may be physically in the Dham, but that may be Dhamma Parad somehow. So I don't think that devotee will agree with all the things I'm saying, but but I don't know. I hope you understand my point, and I think that's a more realistic way of approaching these principles, these practices. There has to be anukul seva. That's the standard of Rupa Goswami. You have to render favorable. Your bhakti should be performed from a favorable perspective. And favorable means, he will say, Jiva Goswami clarified, not only you will do something that pleases Krishna, but your intention is to please Krishna. That's different. As we say, Kamsa was doing something that pleased Krishna. He was absorbed in thinking about him 24 hours a day. Krishna says, I like manmana, think about me always. Kamsa was doing that. But the attitude was not precisely the best. So the criteria for anukul is twofold. Something that pleases Krishna and with the attitude of pleasing him. So residing in the Dham has to be there. And of course this is not black and white. Which attitude of pleasing Krishna you have, there are so many levels. So, and it's a delicate thing to be in the Dham. That's why Prabhupada also say, if your guru is not giving the instruction or the blessings, you shouldn't stay in Vrindavan more than 2 days or something like that, he said. And you may say, but Prabhupada, the scriptures say that being in the Dham is such a blessing, and the more I am there, the more blessed I am. Yes, if you are there with a particular mood. If not, you may have to leave that as soon as possible, if you will. You may go mad, you may commit aparadh, you may create a whole turmoil in your bhajan. So it depends every case. No? Okay. Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai. So I don't know. Any other question? We have some extra minutes. Morley, yeah.
I've read a couple times in the scripture this term Nirapaksha Vaishnava.
Which one, sorry?
Nirapaksha?
Nirapeksha or Nirupadi?
Nirupadi, too.
Okay, because Nirapeksha is also there. Okay, Nirupadi.
Yeah.
Ah.
What does that mean? And if it falls in accordance with Kanishta, Madhyam, or Uttam, or where?
Nirupadi.
Nirupadi.
Yeah. Well, Nirupadi means free from upadis. We spoke about upadis some minutes ago. Upadi means like, sometimes it's translated as designations. There are different ways to explain those terms. And actually the very definition of bhakti that we follow, of course, Rupa Goswami gives the main definition of Uttam Bhakti in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Anya Vilasita Sunyam Gyan Karmadhyanabritam Anukulyena Krishnana Shilanam Bhakti Uttama. But that definition of him is based on one verse, which says like this: Sarvopadi vinirmuktam tat paratvena nirmalam rishikena hrishikesh sevanam bhakti ruchyate, from Narad Pancharatra. So there we find the expression Sarvopadi vinirmuktam. So there we have the Sarvo Upadi Nir Muktam. So you put together Nir Upadi. So that means totally free from all designations. In order to engage, bhakti means to get free from all designations. Of course, not all designations, but all false sense of designation, all temporary designation, because we are not after becoming one with Brahman, if you will, and merging into Brahma Sayuja, and no more designations, because there is a form of Nirupadi, if you will. Sometimes even the term Nirupadi has been translated as a Vaishnava who loves to be anonymous, but it's not so accurate. Of course, you may connect one thing to the other. Someone who is not looking for position and to be in certain particular, identify with I'm this, I'm that, here I am, but is in the background serving invisibly. But strictly speaking, Nirupadi, it means again, someone who is free from upadis, and this is not black and white, but generally the term has been used for those who are 100% free of upadis, who are the topmost Vaishnavas. And again, to be free from upadi means to be free from all sense of identity which does not fit the Vaishnava abhiman. Abhiman means how do I consider myself, which is my self consideration. When I think about myself, which idea comes? What I am to me. No? Because we may have so many ideas. No? I am, and we fill the line with so many things. So Nirupadi has to do with I am some permanent reality. I am servant of Sri Guru. I am whatever. As Guru Maharaj will say, I am Gopa Gopi. Under Maya Shakti, we may say I am American or whatever. False designation. If you are free from the gunas, you may think I am. He will say, no, it's a shorter sentences, but encompasses much more. And beyond the I am is the I am something in a positive eternal realm. I am Gopa, I am Gopi, I am Das, Das and Das. And this famous verse from Mahaprabhu, which is used, I think, by almost everyone in Archana, in the section called Bhuta Suddhi. Bhuta Suddhi means like purification of one's self, of one's existence. And there is this mantra that is generally invoked there. Naham vipro na cha narapatir na pivaisana sudro naham varni na cha grihapatir novanasto yatirba kintu prodyam nikila paramananda purnam ritabdya gopi bhartu pada kamalayor dasa dasanudas. This is Mahaprabhu himself speaking, saying, I'm not a Brahmin, I'm not a Kshatriya, I'm not a Vaisya, I'm not a Sudra, I'm not sannyasi, I'm not Vanaprastha, nor Grihastha, not Brahmachari. No? Neti neti. I'm not this, I'm not that. Like rejecting all these upadis. These are upadis. No? I can identify. And then he said, of course, Gopi Bhartu Pada Kamalayor Dasa Dasanudas. I am the servant of the servant of the servant of Sri Krishna, the beloved of the gopis. So there is a positive sense of the designation. Yeah, if we want to take upadi as designation. So it's not only rejecting false designation, but of course accepting the real one. And for us, I will be able to reject the false ones as much as I accept the real one. Not the opposite way around. Our path is not vairagya or renunciation, but it's or detachment, but raso varsam prasopyasya param drishya nivartate. Krishna says in the Gita, as you relish a higher taste, you will be able to dismiss the lower taste. But first you have to taste the higher one. No? If during all your life you only were eating some burned bread, and that's the only thing your tongue knew, and I tell you, I have a very delicious new preparation called, I don't know, cake. Kishore's birthday cake. There's still more. And I tell you, this is much more beautiful. So just right now, make a vow to me that you won't eat that burnt cake anymore. And you'll say, no. First, let me taste that. Because I have no experience of anything else. So I don't know, maybe you may be cheating. I am not able to detach myself from the only thing I know, and somehow or other it maintains me alive and whatever. So, but once you give her a piece of the cake, I say, oh, now I can reject the burnt bread without any thought about it. So first you need to taste that. So yeah, that's basically Nirupadi Vaishnava. It refers to a Vaishnava who is really free from all mundane designations, totally absorbing his, her spiritual, if you will, designation. And sometimes the implication or byproduct of that is the other idea that I mentioned, that that person may be not interested at all in positioning himself, herself in any single way. Because in the words of Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta, he will say, Pratishta Sukarabhishta on one side, and then he says, Vaishnaver Pratishta Tate Korunishta. So one side he says, the desire for position in the realm of upadhis, of false designation, that smells worse than the stool of a pig. Pratishta. I want to position myself here and this and but then he says Vaishnava Pratishta. He says, but there is one Pratishta that is legal, if you will, and that means to identify yourself as a Vaishnava and Tate Koronishta, and to be firm in that designation. That's the only way to get rid of all the other, of the negative Pratishta. We generally use Pratistas in a negative way, but there's a positive side to it, because I cannot live without identity. So sometimes the devotees have to be careful in their discourse, because they may speak about, we are not this, we are not that, we are not that. But if you don't say what you can be, people will go neurotic, because they cannot sustain being without. They are taking away all my sense of identity. Just give me something about that. So we should also properly emphasize who we are and who we can be, especially what's our potential. So, but yeah, that has to do with Nirupadhi, to be free from. And again, we may not be Nirupadhi Vaishnavas, but that's our ideal. So gradually we are in the process of acquiring new bhakti samskars, and those samskars will basically create a new sense of identity. That's how it works. You have if you want to speak in more yogic terms, samskars and vasanas. We have impressions, and all these impressions put together create some. We spoke the other day in the Vaishnava etiquette lecture. All the samskar, when you receive certain samskars, you put them together for a while, and they become some habit, you say. So you acquire certain habits, and then put together become like a lifestyle, and that lifestyle will be like tied to an identity, and that will have to do with this idea of upadhis and nirupadhi. So we are in the project of becoming nirupadhi, but for that we are replacing bhukti mukti samskars with bhakti samskars. Gradually they will get together, they will create certain habits in our daily life, and those habits, properly rooted and nourished, will affect in a positive way our sense of self, and will create a new sense of personality, new identity, a new lifestyle, a new sense of I am, and eventually that equates the attainment of being a Nirupadhi, basically. You are no longer identified with whatever was. Sometimes Upadhi is also translated as limiting adjunct. At least Satyanarayana Das Babaji translates like that in his Sandarbhas. That's a good way of putting it. Not only designation, but limiting adjunct, you pronounce. So that's another way of conceive the idea of Nirupadhi. To be no more limited by those limiting adjuncts, by being fully imbibed by unlimited designations that are not limiting myself, but are allowing me to facilitating. They are playing that role, as Guru Maharaj will say. Like when you are an artist, and in order to express your art, you need a form, a canvas, and that facilitates. It's not limiting your art, but allowing that to be expressed. So in the same way, when we speak about spiritual form and things that seem limited or limiting, there is a place for that in order to facilitate our potential, not to limit that. So, yeah, Nirupadhi is not a limiting conception, actually. It's on the opposite. Okay. I don't know. Anything else?
Just to clear up my misconception, what does Nirapaksha mean?
Nirapeksha?
Nirapaksha, yeah.
Nirapeksha. Well, I will say it's almost like synonymous with Nirupadi.
Okay.
Nirapeksha. Of course, sometimes the term, I think Baladev Vidyabhushan gave some categories of levels of devotees, and one of them is Nirapeksha, and that may be seen as the topmost. And yes, it's connected to that actually, as we say, Nirupadi, Nirapeksha. So, yeah, there is one nice verse in the Bhagavatam. How it says? Nirapeksham. I was thinking about which word it starts, and it was Nirapeksha. Nirapeksham munim shantam nivairam samadarsanam anubrajamyaham nityam pujayeti angrirenubihi. This is a very nice verse. This is one of the favorite ones in the Srimad Bhagavatam. I would say this is, I don't know, at least to my notice, this is the verse where Krishna is speaking in the most explicit way about how much he loves his devotees and he depends on them. So, first two lines describe Krishna himself speaking here to Uddhav. This is 11th canto, Uddhav Gita. So, first two lines he describes the devotees, and second two lines he describes how those devotees affect him and how he reciprocates with them. So first he says, Nirapeksham munim shantam nirbairam samadarshanam. Basically means my devotees are nirapeksha, which will be another way of saying fully detached. But again, we are speaking about this type of detachment, no? From false designation, not necessarily living in a cave with loincloth or whatever, but that type of detachment, the most difficult, which implies fully attached to me, basically. So Nirapeksham munim shantam. Munim, they are munis, they are thinkers, they are the most intelligent. Shantam means they are peaceful. Nirbairam samadarshanam. They have no enemy towards any. I mean, they see no enemy, and samadarshanam, they see everyone equal. It's a general description of devotees, but now in this last two lines, Krishna speaks really like explicitly. He says, Anubrajami aham nityam pujayeti angrirenubi. So anubrajami. Braja means here like going. Like mamekam sharanam braja. Braja. Braja ami. When I go, anu means to follow. Like raga anuga. So anubrajami aham. Aham means I. Krishna says, I follow them whenever they go, nityam, perpetually. Whenever they go, I go behind them always. And pujayetri angrirenubi. And I hope, I follow them whenever they be, with the expectation of bathing myself in the dust of their feet. That's basically what he said. I follow the footsteps of my devotees, and I cherish to be purified by the contact of their lotus feet. So that's a very powerful statement. I really like that verse. And the verses start with the word Nirapeksha, describing again how this idea of Nirapeksha or Nirupadi, how Krishna reacts to that, if you will. If you become a Nirapeksha, Nirupadi, okay, be prepared for Krishna's reciprocation in those terms. And he's ready for that. It's a very intense. That's the idea. I mean, for Krishna to say that and to reciprocate in that level, that's speaking about what's going on with the Nirapeksha, with the Nirupadi. What's their level of attachment to Krishna and absorption in the real designation as servants of Krishna, and so on. So yeah, these are very nice terms. Only one word that you can live on forever in those lines. No? Guru Maharaj always describes Srila Siddhar Maharaj like that. No? Like he was preoccupied with a few words from a few lines of a few verses, and he was just swimming in those waves forever. He knew many verses, but he would take some line and he got so preoccupied with that for years and extracting and delving deep into that. So we may not have that capacity, but we are blessed to be in contact with those swans. So something like that. Okay, so I think we are almost in time. If there are no further questions, we may finish here. So there is Artik, and the Pujari is the one with the camera, so also I think, so we have to have some time for the next activity. So thank you very much for your time. Srila Gurudev ki jai, Sriman Mahaprabhu ki jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Shri Dauji Gopal ki jai, गौर भक्त वृंद की जय, गौर प्रमाण वंश कल्पतरु कृपा सिंधु पतितानं पवनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय, गौर हरि बोल। साधु संघ की जय। Okay, Bhima, this is good.